I am Braxton, 32 years old, and until last year, I thought buying my apartment was my greatest achievement. After saving for years while my parents funded my sister Amanda's every whim, I finally had something of my own. Then came the unthinkable: my family sued me because I refused to sell my home to fund her divorce. Their betrayal cut deep, but I found a way to stand my ground and teach them a lesson they will never forget. Before I dive into this family drama, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Growing up in suburban Philadelphia, I always knew my place in the family hierarchy. My father, Robert, worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, bringing home a decent salary that supported our comfortable middle-class lifestyle. My mother, Diana, taught English literature at the local high school, adding to our household income while also being the emotional center of our family. At least she was the emotional center for my sister Amanda. For me, things were different. From my earliest memories, it was clear that Amanda, who is 2 years older than me, held a special place in my parents' hearts. Her birthday parties were always elaborate affairs, with dozens of friends invited, professional entertainers hired, and custom cakes ordered from the fancy bakery across town. Mine, by contrast, usually consisted of pizza in the backyard with a few friends and a cake from the supermarket. When Amanda turned 16, my parents surprised her with a car. When my 16th birthday rolled around, they suggested I save up for my own vehicle and offered to match 20% of whatever I could put together. This pattern repeated throughout our childhood. Amanda received new clothes at the start of each school year, while I inherited her boyfriend's hand-me-downs that my mother altered to fit me. She attended an expensive summer camp for future leaders, while I was encouraged to find a summer job to build character. When she needed a computer for school, she got the latest model. I received permission to use the family desktop during specific hours. I do not tell you these things to evoke pity. Rather, I want you to understand how these experiences shaped me. By the time I was 14, I had learned two valuable lessons. First, that I could not count on my parents for the same support my sister received, and second, that my financial independence would be my ticket to freedom. This realization became my driving force. In high school, I focused intensely on academics, knowing scholarships were my best path to college. While Amanda attended parties and cultivated her social life, I worked part-time at a local electronics store and studied late into the night. My efforts paid off when I received a partial scholarship to study computer science at a state university. College years were challenging, but formative. I shared a cramped apartment with 3 roommates to save on rent, worked 20 hours weekly at the campus IT department, and still maintained a GPA high enough to keep my scholarship. Meanwhile, Amanda attended a private liberal arts college, her tuition, housing, and expenses fully covered by our parents. She changed her major 3 times before settling on communications, extending her education to 5 years, all funded without question. After graduation, I accepted a position at a tech startup in Boston. The salary was modest, but the opportunity for growth seemed promising. I lived like a college student for 3 more years, biking to work regardless of weather meal, prepping on Sundays, and tracking every dollar in a detailed spreadsheet. My colleagues went out for drinks and dinners, took weekend trips, and upgraded their apartments. I stayed focused on my goal, saving for a down payment on my own place. During this time, Amanda drifted between jobs in marketing, public relations, and event planning, never staying at one company longer than 18 months. When she complained about difficult bosses or toxic workplaces, our parents offered both emotional support and financial cushions during her transitions. When I mentioned challenges at my job, my father would remind me that perseverance builds character. 3 years into my career, my dedication at work was recognized with a promotion and substantial salary increase. The timing coincided perfectly with my savings goal, and I began searching for properties. The Boston housing market was competitive, but after months of searching and several rejected offers, I finally found the perfect place. A 2-bedroom apartment in Boston's South End, in a building with character and in a neighborhood showing signs of upcoming development. The bidding war was intense, but my preparation paid off. I had all my documentation ready, a pre-approval letter from my bank, and a strategy to make my offer stand out. When I received the call that my offer had been accepted, I felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything I had experienced before. At 30, I had achieved something substantial through my own efforts. The apartment needed updates, but nothing structural. I spent weekends painting, refinishing floors, and installing new fixtures. I learned plumbing basics from YouTube videos and saved thousands by doing much of the work myself. Within 6 months, the apartment had transformed into a home that reflected my taste and effort. As the neighborhood continued to develop with new restaurants and shops opening the property, value began to appreciate noticeably. While I was building my life in Boston, Amanda met and married James Morgan, the son of a successful real estate developer. Their wedding was a lavish affair at a country club with 300 guests, a 7-piece band, and a menu featuring imported delicacies. My parents emptied a significant portion of their retirement savings to fund this extravaganza, assuring me it was an investment in Amanda's future security. James had a high-paying position in his father's company, and Amanda quickly adapted to a lifestyle of luxury. She stopped working entirely, focusing instead on decorating their suburban mansion, hosting dinner parties for James's business associates, and planning elaborate vacations. Their social media showcased their perfect life: sunset cocktails on private yachts, front row seats at exclusive events, and casual name-dropping of celebrities they had encountered. I visited them once shortly after they purchased their home. The 11,000-square-foot house featured 6 bedrooms, a home theater, a wine cellar, and a pool house larger than my entire apartment. Amanda gave me a tour, pointing out the imported marble, custom furniture, and art pieces selected by their personal decorator. When I mentioned how different our lives had become, she laughed and said, "Well, you chose computers, and I chose James." I maintained a cordial relationship with Amanda and James, seeing them primarily at holiday gatherings. My relationship with my parents remained predictable: regular phone calls, occasional visits, and the continuing subtle reminders that Amanda needed or deserved more attention, more support, and more understanding than I did. I had accepted this dynamic and created a fulfilling life independent of family validation. Then came the Thanksgiving that changed everything. 2 years after I purchased my apartment, our family gathered at Amanda and James's mansion for Thanksgiving. My parents arrived 2 days early to help with preparations, though Amanda had caterers handling the actual cooking. I flew in from Boston on Thanksgiving morning, taking an early flight to maximize my limited vacation days. The tension was palpable from the moment I arrived. James, usually eager to show off his latest luxury acquisition, remained locked in his home office on work calls. Amanda seemed agitated, checking her phone constantly, and drinking mimosas before noon. My parents exchanged worried glances, but maintained forced cheerfulness as they arranged elaborate place settings for the dining table. During dinner, the facade cracked further. When my father asked James about recent developments at his company, James responded curtly that business was fine and changed the subject. When Amanda mentioned plans for their upcoming anniversary trip to Bali, James stared at her and said, "We should discuss that later." Amanda's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass, already refilled several times. After dessert, I helped my mother clear dishes, while Amanda and James disappeared into different parts of the house. In the kitchen, my mother whispered, "They have been having some problems. Money issues, I think. James says Amanda spends too much." "They seem to have plenty," I remarked, gesturing toward the professional-grade kitchen appliances that probably cost more than my entire renovation budget. "Well, appearances can be deceiving," my mother replied cryptically. "Amanda has confided in us, but please do not mention I told you anything." I returned to Boston the next day, thinking little of the incident. Couples argue about finances all the time, and given their lifestyle, any money problems were likely relative. Perhaps Amanda had exceeded even James's generous budget for decorative throw pillows. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. My mother's voice was tight with anxiety. "Amanda is here with us. James filed for divorce yesterday. She needs her family right now." The story emerged in pieces over the next few days. James had discovered Amanda had opened multiple credit card accounts, without his knowledge accumulating nearly $100,000 in debt on designer clothes, jewelry, and secret spa weekends with friends. This betrayal of trust came after repeated conversations about budgeting and financial transparency. Furthermore, James had evidence suggesting Amanda had been pursuing a flirtation with his younger cousin, exchanging inappropriate text messages and meeting for private lunches. Amanda denied any physical affair, but admitted to enjoying the attention when James was busy with work. The final straw came when James learned Amanda had lied about visiting her college friend in Chicago. Instead, she had flown to Las Vegas with two friends for a weekend of gambling, charging everything to a hidden credit card and losing $20,000 at the blackjack tables. What Amanda had not anticipated was the prenuptial agreement she had signed. The document, which she apparently never read carefully before signing, contained strict infidelity and financial misconduct clauses. She would receive a one-time settlement far smaller than she had expected, no alimony and no claim to their home or any of James's family assets. My parents called a family dinner at their house the following weekend. Amanda sat at the table, eyes puffy from crying, wearing sweatpants and an old college hoodie instead of her usual designer outfits. My father cleared his throat importantly and announced they were developing a family plan to help Amanda through this difficult transition. "Your sister needs to rebuild her life," my mother explained, reaching over to pat Amanda's hand. "She needs a safe place to heal and then resources to start fresh." I nodded sympathetically. "That makes sense. If you need a place to stay temporarily, Amanda, I have a second bedroom in my apartment. It is not fancy, but you are welcome to it while you figure things out." Amanda looked at me as if I had offered her a cardboard box under a bridge. "No offense, Braxton, but I need my own space. I cannot possibly fit my belongings in a guest room, and Boston is so cold and dreary." "Well, it was just an offer," I said, trying to hide my irritation. "What are you thinking instead?" My parents exchanged glances. "We are helping her look at rental properties in Philadelphia," my father said. "Something nice in a good neighborhood, where she can feel secure." "On what income?" I asked, immediately regretting my bluntness, when Amanda's eyes welled with tears. "That is part of what we need to figure out," my mother said quickly. "Amanda has her communications degree. There are opportunities out there." The conversation shifted to potential job prospects and mutual connections who might help Amanda find employment. I offered to review her resume and reach out to some contacts in marketing departments at tech companies. Amanda thanked me without enthusiasm, clearly unexcited about returning to regular employment after years of leisure. As I prepared to leave, my father walked me to my car. "Your sister is going through hell right now," he said. "We all need to pull together as a family." "I understand," I replied. "I offered her a place to stay, and I will help with job searching. What else can I do?" He put his hand on my shoulder. "Just keep thinking about it. You are in a stable position now. Amanda has lost everything. Remember how we paid for her college so she could have opportunities? Now she has to start over from nothing." The comment about paying for her college seemed oddly placed, but I nodded and drove away. Over the next 2 weeks, the texts and calls from my parents increased in frequency. My mother mentioned how Amanda needed furniture for whatever apartment she would eventually find. My father commented on how my apartment was probably gaining good equity in that up-and-coming neighborhood. During one call, my mother said, "You know you were so fortunate to get that scholarship. We always wished we could have done more for you during college the way we did for Amanda." "I am grateful for everything you did." I responded automatically, though. I recalled no financial support beyond occasional care packages with snacks and toiletries. "And now you have that big 2-bedroom all to yourself," she continued. "It must feel empty sometimes." The implications were becoming clearer, but still, I was unprepared for what came next. 3 weeks after Amanda returned to my parents' house, I received a text from my mother's Sunday brunch at our house, 11 o'clock. "Family discussion about Amanda's future. Very important you attend." I drove the 6 hours from Boston to Philadelphia that Sunday morning, arriving at their house precisely at 11. The dining room table was set with my mother's best china, and a spread of bagels, fruit, and a casserole sat untouched in the center. My father gestured for me to sit. Amanda was already seated, looking more pulled together than at our last meeting, her hair freshly highlighted and wearing a brand new looking sweater that still had the crisp appearance of something recently purchased. "We have given this a lot of thought," my father began, pulling out a folder containing several printed documents. "We have developed a family solution that will help Amanda get back on her feet while strengthening our bonds as a family." My mother nodded encouragingly. "We have always taught you both that family supports each other through difficult times. This is one of those times when we need to come together." My father slid a document across the table. It was a printout of a real estate listing for my apartment, with comparable recent sales in my building and neighborhood highlighted. What is this? I asked, though. A sinking feeling in my stomach told me I already knew. Based on current market value, your apartment would sell for approximately $480,000, my father said, pointing to the circled figure at the bottom of the page. After paying off your mortgage and covering selling costs, you would clear about $240,000. I stared at him. Why would I sell my apartment? For Amanda, my mother said, as if this explained everything. She needs a fresh start. The settlement from James barely covers her outstanding debts. She needs capital to secure appropriate housing and rebuild her life. You want me to sell my home and give Amanda the money? I clarified, still unable to believe what I was hearing. It is the perfect solution, my father continued, pulling out another document. We have calculated that after paying off her debts, she would need approximately $180,000 for a down payment on a suitable condo in Philadelphia, plus some funds for furnishing and a few months of living expenses while she secures employment. Amanda spoke up, her voice soft and trembling slightly. I know it is a lot to ask, Braxton, but I have lost everything. My mental health cannot handle a downgrade to some cramped apartment in a dangerous neighborhood. I need security right now. And where would I live? I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. You can move back home temporarily, my mother said brightly, as if offering me a wonderful opportunity. Your old room is still available. You can save on rent and utilities while you rebuild your savings. In 6 months to a year, you could have enough for a down payment on a smaller place, my father added. Maybe a 1-bedroom, since you are just one person. Or a studio even. You are young and can start over easily. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process the audacity of what they were proposing. They wanted me to give up the home I had worked years to afford, move back to my childhood bedroom at 32, and start my financial life over from scratch so that Amanda could maintain a lifestyle closer to what she had grown accustomed to with James. This is not reasonable, I finally said. I spent years saving for that down payment. I have built equity. The apartment has appreciated because I chose a good location and improved the property. You are asking me to give up everything I have worked for. Family makes sacrifices for each other, my father said firmly. Your sister would do the same for you. I looked at Amanda. Would you? If our situations were reversed, would you sell your home to help me? She avoided my eyes. That is different. I was married. This was supposed to be my life forever. I did not plan for this disaster. Neither did I replied. I did not plan to be 32 and homeless. Not homeless, my mother corrected. You would live here with us. For how long, I asked. How long would it take me to save $240,000 while paying you rent and commuting 6 hours to my job in Boston? We would not charge you rent, my father said magnanimously. And perhaps you could find a job here in Philadelphia. A fresh start for both of you. I took a deep breath. I have spent 7 years building my career at my company. I am up for another promotion next year. I cannot just start over because Amanda's marriage failed. Her marriage did not just fail, my mother said sharply. James betrayed her. He worked all the time and neglected her emotional needs, driving her to make some unfortunate decisions. I thought about pointing out that maxing out secret credit cards and gambling in Las Vegas went beyond unfortunate decisions, but I held my tongue. I understand this is a shock, my father said, but real family makes sacrifices for each other. We have sacrificed for both of you throughout our lives. Now it is your turn to step up for your sister. I am willing to help, I said carefully. I can offer Amanda the spare room until she finds her footing. I can help her with her resume and job connections. I could even loan her some money for a security deposit on a rental. But I cannot sell my home. Amanda burst into tears. See, he values his apartment more than his family, more than my well-being. My mother rushed to comfort her while my father fixed me with a disappointed stare. I thought we raised you better than this, Braxton. Your sister is suffering, and you are concerned about property values. I am concerned about the 7 years of my life I invested in making this purchase possible, I countered. I am concerned about throwing away my financial security at 32 and starting over from my childhood bedroom. We are giving you 1 week to reconsider, my father said, gathering his documents back into the folder. 1 week to decide if you are going to do the right thing for this family. Real family would never ask me to do this, I said, quietly standing up. Real family would not expect me to dismantle my life because of someone else's mistakes. How dare you, my mother gasped. After everything we have done for you, I left without eating a single bite of the untouched brunch. The 6-hour drive back to Boston gave me plenty of time to replay the conversation in my mind, and to wonder how my family could possibly think their demand was reasonable. The week that followed was one of the most stressful of my life. I could barely focus at work, my mind constantly returning to my family's outrageous demand. I called my friend Tyler and met him for drinks after work, needing an outside perspective. "They want you to do what?" Tyler exclaimed, after I explained the situation. "Sell your apartment and give your sister the money." "Are they insane?" "Apparently they think it is perfectly reasonable," I said, staring into my beer. "My father actually suggested I could find a new job in Philadelphia and move back to my childhood bedroom at 32. Tyler shook his head in disbelief. "And what happens when your sister blows through that money too? Will they expect you to sell your car next? Donate a kidney?" His reaction confirmed what I already knew: my family's request went far beyond normal expectations of support. Still, I decided to cover all bases before making my final decision. I scheduled a meeting with my financial advisor to discuss the implications of selling my apartment. "From a purely financial standpoint, it would be a terrible move," she told me bluntly. "You would lose all the equity you have built, pay significant transaction costs, and reset your position in the housing market at a time when prices are rising. Not to mention the tax implications of gifting such a large sum to your sister." I also researched the current housing market, confirming what I suspected: I would struggle to find another property in Boston anywhere near as good as my current apartment, especially if I had to start with a smaller down payment. After days of reflection, I knew my answer would not change. I could not and would not sell my apartment. I spent an evening crafting a careful email to my parents, explaining my decision in the most diplomatic terms possible. "I love our family and want to support Amanda through this difficult time," I wrote. "I am offering her temporary housing in my spare bedroom for up to 6 months while she finds employment. I can connect her with several contacts in marketing departments at technology companies. I am also willing to provide a loan of $5,000 to help with immediate expenses. However, I cannot sell my apartment. This represents years of hard work and financial discipline, and it would be detrimental to my long-term security to start over at this stage. I hope you can understand and respect my position." I sent the email and waited anxiously for their response. 3 days passed, with no word from any family member. I began to hope they had reconsidered their unreasonable demand and were too embarrassed to respond immediately. Then the certified letter arrived. The return address belonged to Wilson and Baker Attorneys at Law. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and pulled out a formal legal letter informing me that my parents were preparing to file a lawsuit against me regarding disputed property and unpaid family loans. According to the letter, my parents claimed they had provided me with substantial financial assistance for the down payment on my apartment in the form of a family loan that was now being called due. They alleged we had a verbal agreement that this money would be repaid when needed for family emergencies, and that my sister's current situation constituted such an emergency. The letter demanded I either sell the apartment and distribute the proceeds as they had outlined, or immediately repay the loan amount of $90,000 plus interest. If I failed to comply within 30 days, they would pursue legal action. I sat down hard on my couch, the letter trembling in my hands. This was an outright lie. My parents had never contributed a single dollar to my down payment. I had documentation of every penny that went into that purchase, all from my own savings account built dollar by dollar over 7 years of frugal living. Still in shock, I called my mother, hoping there had been some terrible misunderstanding. She answered on the 4th ring. "We did not want to do this, Braxton," she said without preamble. "But you have left us no choice. Family takes care of family." "Mom, you know you never gave me money for my down payment," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I saved every dollar myself. I have all the bank records." "We supported you your entire life," she replied. "Everything we did for you was an investment in your future. Now it is time to pay it back by supporting your sister." "That is not how it works," I said. You cannot retroactively claim my apartment because you raised me. That is what parents are supposed to do. We have already spoken to 3 real estate agents, she continued, as if I had not spoken. The market is hot right now. You should be able to sell quickly. I ended the call and immediately began searching for all my financial records. I spent the evening pulling together bank statements, mortgage documents, and the original purchase contract for my apartment. Everything was in my name alone, with clear documentation of where every dollar had come from. The next day, I discovered something even more disturbing. My cousin Ryan called to ask why I was refusing to help Amanda after all your parents have done for you, including helping you buy that fancy apartment in Boston. They told you they helped me buy my apartment, I asked. That is what Aunt Diana said at book club last week, Ryan replied. She told my mom they gave you nearly $100,000 as a down payment gift, and now you refuse to help Amanda in return. I thanked him for the information and hung up feeling sick to my stomach. They were not only threatening legal action based on a lie, but they were also spreading that lie throughout the extended family, damaging my reputation and relationships. Later that day, I discovered a post on Amanda's Instagram, a tearful selfie with the caption, "When your own brother values property over family and refuses to help you rebuild your life after losing everything. Family should be there for each other unconditionally." Heartbroken, betrayed, family crisis. The comments section was filled with sympathetic responses, including several from relatives and family friends, expressing shock at my supposed selfishness. That moment marked a profound shift in my understanding of my family. This was not a temporary lapse in judgment or an emotional overreaction to Amanda's crisis. This was a calculated campaign to pressure, manipulate, and if necessary, legally coerce me into giving up everything I had worked for. The family I had grown up with, despite their flaws and favoritism, had become something I no longer recognized. I realized I needed to protect myself not just financially but legally and emotionally. This was no longer a family disagreement, but a genuine threat to everything I had built. Number. Part 6. Taking Action and Planning. The next morning I began researching attorneys specializing in family law. After several consultations, I retained Rachel Bennett, a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer with experience in family financial disputes. This is a frivolous claim, she assured me after reviewing my documentation. They have no case. You have meticulous records proving you funded the entire purchase yourself. However, we need to take this seriously, because even baseless lawsuits can cause significant stress and expense. We spent 3 hours going through my financial history, creating a comprehensive defense file. I provided bank statements showing the systematic savings from my salary over 7 years' withdrawal records for the down payment mortgage approval documents, listing me as the sole borrower and the final closing statement with no indication of any third-party contribution. What concerns me, Rachel said, is their willingness to fabricate a loan agreement. If they are prepared to lie about this, we need to consider what other steps they might take. Her words proved prophetic. The following day, I discovered someone had been going through my mail. A neighbor mentioned seeing my mother at my building the previous weekend, telling the doorman she was watering my plants while I was away on business. I had not been away, nor had I given her permission to enter my apartment. I immediately changed the locks and informed building management that no one was to be given access to my unit without my explicit permission, regardless of family relationship. Next, I learned my parents had contacted my employer's HR department, asking about my salary and benefits under the guise of helping me with financial planning. Fortunately, the HR manager was professional enough to refuse to disclose any information. Most disturbing was discovering they had attempted to contact my mortgage lender, claiming to be co-investors in the property with a financial interest that needed protection. The lender had declined to discuss my account without proper authorization, but informed me of the attempt. Through conversations with extended family members, I pieced together more of the story. Amanda had been in financial trouble long before her divorce. She had maxed out multiple credit cards not just during her marriage but in the years prior as well. My parents had paid off her debts several times, including once just before her wedding to James, presumably to hide her financial irresponsibility from her future husband. This pattern of bailouts had strained my parents' retirement savings, explaining their desperate attempt to extract money from my apartment. They were not just trying to help Amanda maintain her lifestyle. They were trying to recoup their own losses from years of enabling her behavior. Armed with this knowledge, I developed a comprehensive strategy with my attorney. First, we filed for a temporary restraining order, citing harassment and unauthorized attempts to access my financial information. The order would legally prevent my parents from entering my building, contacting my employer, or attempting to access any of my financial accounts. Second, we prepared a countersuit for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress based on the false statements they had made to family members and my mother's unauthorized entry to my apartment. Third, we drafted a detailed cease and desist letter addressing each false claim in their attorney's letter, providing documentation, refuting their assertions, and warning of legal consequences if they persisted in spreading misinformation or pursuing their fraudulent lawsuit. Throughout this process, I also worked with a therapist to process the emotional trauma of this family betrayal. Dr. Caroline Russell specialized in family estrangement issues and helped me navigate the complex emotions of setting boundaries with parents who had always favored my sister. What you are experiencing is the collapse of a family system that was dysfunctional all along, she explained during one session. Your parents created a dynamic where Amanda was entitled to endless support while you were expected to be self-sufficient. When that system was threatened by her divorce, they attempted to maintain it by sacrificing your stability instead of confronting the reality that this pattern cannot continue. With my legal and emotional support systems in place, I prepared for what I knew would be a difficult confrontation. I created a detailed timeline of events, gathered all relevant documentation, and even recorded phone conversations with my parents, legal in my state, that clearly demonstrated their knowledge that their claims were false. Finally, I wrote a comprehensive email to my extended family, not to disparage my parents and sister, but to calmly present my side of the story with supporting evidence. I explained that contrary to what they might have heard, I had received no financial assistance for my apartment purchase that had documentation to prove it. And while I had offered alternative support to Amanda, I could not sacrifice my own financial security based on false claims. I have always valued our family, I concluded, but respect and honesty must be the foundation of any relationship, even between family members. I hope we can move forward with truth and mutual respect. With these preparations complete, I was ready for whatever came next. Part 7. Confrontation and Consequences. The response to my cease and desist letter came swiftly. My parents' attorney sent a terse reply, indicating they were reviewing the documentation provided and would respond fully within 10 business days. Reading between the lines, it was clear they had not anticipated my thorough documentation or forceful legal response. 3 days later, however, the situation escalated dramatically. I was in a meeting with my development team when my phone began buzzing repeatedly. My administrative assistant knocked on the conference room door, looking uncomfortable. "I am sorry to interrupt, Braxton, but your family is in the lobby causing a scene. Security is asking what you want them to do." I excused myself and hurried to the lobby to find my parents and Amanda standing near the reception desk. My mother was crying loudly while my father demanded to speak to me immediately. Amanda was filming the entire scene on her phone, presumably for social media content to support their narrative of my cruelty. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice low and controlled. "You know my attorney has advised against direct contact while your lawsuit is pending." "We do not need lawyers to resolve family matters," my father declared loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. "You are breaking your mother's heart with this stubbornness." "This is not the place for this discussion," I said firmly. "I am at work. You need to leave." "Not until you agree to sit down with us like a family," my mother sobbed. "Not with lawyers, just us." Amanda stepped forward, still filming. "Are you really going to have security? Throw your own parents out of your building? Is that who you have become?" Security personnel were already approaching, alerted by the receptionist. Several of my colleagues had emerged from nearby meeting rooms, watching the scene unfold with uncomfortable expressions. "I did not invite you here," I said quietly. "You came to my workplace unannounced to create exactly this kind of scene. That says more about who you have become than it does about me." I turned to the security officers. "These people are leaving. Please escort them out of the building." "You cannot do this," Amanda shrieked, making sure to capture her own outraged expression in her video. "We are your family. You owe us." As security guided them toward the exit, my father called over his shoulder. "This is not over, Braxton. Family obligations cannot be dismissed with security guards." I returned to my meeting apologizing to my team for the disruption. My manager pulled me aside afterward and expressed concern about what had happened. "Is everything okay? Do you need some time off to deal with whatever that was?" I briefly explained the situation, feeling both embarrassed and grateful for his understanding. "Take whatever time you need," he said, "and let us know if there is anything we can do to support you. Family conflicts can be harder than any technical challenge." That evening, my phone exploded with calls and messages from extended family members. Aunt Susan called to ask if I really had security remove my parents from my office building. "They showed up unannounced to create a public scene," I explained. "They are currently threatening to sue me over false claims about my apartment. What would you have done?" "Your mother is devastated, Braxton. She says you have hired some shark lawyer to intimidate them when all they want is to help Amanda." "Did she also mention that she entered my apartment without permission while I was at work, or that they contacted my employer asking about my salary, or that they have been telling everyone they paid for my apartment when they did not? Contribute a single dollar." There was a pause. "There must be some misunderstanding. Your parents would never lie about something like that." "I have all the bank records, Aunt Susan. Every dollar that went into my down payment came from my account, saved over 7 years. They never gave me any money for my apartment." The conversation ended awkwardly with my aunt promising to get to the bottom of this. Similar calls followed from Uncle Paul, my cousin Jennifer, and even my grandfather, who rarely involved himself in family disputes. "There is going to be a family meeting at my house on Saturday," my grandfather announced. "Everyone will be there. I want you to come and bring whatever documentation you have. It is time to sort this out once and for all." I consulted with Rachel, who advised caution, but agreed that presenting my evidence to the extended family might be the most effective way to counter the narrative my parents had been spreading. "Just remember, this is not a legal proceeding," she warned. "The goal is not to prove your case beyond reasonable doubt, but to help reasonable family members understand your position. Bring copies of key documents, not every bank statement from the past 7 years." Saturday arrived, and I drove to my grandfather's house with a folder containing selected financial records, the false demand letter from my parents' attorney, and printouts of the defamatory social media posts Amanda had been sharing. The atmosphere was tense when I arrived. About 20 family members were gathered in my grandfather's living room with my parents, and Amanda seated prominently on the couch. My mother's eyes were red from crying, while my father maintained a stern expression of righteous indignation. Amanda looked simultaneously victimized and vindictive. My grandfather, at 84, still sharp and commanding respect, called the gathering to order. "I have known all of you since you were born," he began, looking between me and Amanda. "This family does not sue each other. We do not drag our disputes into public. We sit down and work things out." He gestured for me to present my side first, perhaps sensing I was the less emotional party. I had prepared carefully, knowing this might be my only opportunity to correct the record with the entire family present. "Thank you for arranging this, Grandpa," I began. "I want to start by saying I love our family, including my parents and sister. What I cannot accept is being lied about and threatened with a lawsuit based on false claims." I distributed copies of my bank statements showing the systematic savings over 7 years, withdrawal records matching the exact amount of my down payment, and mortgage documents listing me as the sole borrower with no co-contributions. As you can see, every dollar for my apartment came from my own savings. My parents never contributed to my down payment. There was never any loan or gift. My father interrupted. "We supported you your entire life. Everything we provided enabled you to save that money. Parents are supposed to support their children," I replied calmly. "That does not give you ownership of everything I earn as an adult." I continued by playing a recorded phone conversation in which my mother admitted they had never given me money for the apartment, but insisted I owed them anyway because family helps family. The recording also captured her admission that they had entered my apartment without permission and contacted my employer. Several family members looked uncomfortable as the recording played. My cousin Ryan whispered something to his wife, who nodded with a troubled expression. Amanda has suffered a terrible loss, I acknowledged. I offered her my spare bedroom for 6 months and a loan to help with immediate expenses. I offered to connect her with job opportunities. What I cannot do is sell my home and move back to my parents' house at 32 years old. Amanda jumped up. You have no idea what I am going through. You have always had everything easy. Easy, I responded, my composure finally cracking slightly. I worked 20 hours a week throughout college while maintaining a scholarship. I lived with 3 roommates and biked to work in Boston winters to save money. I spent 7 years sacrificing to afford my apartment while you had your entire education paid for your wedding funded and repeated financial bailouts whenever you overspent. My Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, spoke up. Diana, did you really tell people you paid for Braxton's apartment when you did not? My mother flushed. We supported him in other ways. Without our support during his childhood, he never would have been in position to save that money. That is what parents do, my grandfather said quietly. We raise our children. That does not entitle us to their adult earnings or property. The room fell silent. My grandfather looked at the documents I had provided then at my parents. Robert, Diana, did you contribute financially to Braxton's apartment purchase? Yes or no? My father shifted uncomfortably. Not directly, but... Yes or no, my grandfather pressed. No, my father finally admitted. But we have supported Amanda through many crises, and now our retirement savings are depleted. We need Braxton to step up, as we have always done for both of them. By selling his home based on a false claim, my grandfather asked. By threatening him with a fraudulent lawsuit. The tide of family opinion was visibly shifting. Several relatives who had arrived looking at me with suspicion were now directing their disapproving gazes toward my parents. My Uncle George, an attorney himself, was examining my documentation with a furrowed brow. This would never stand up in court, he said finally. There is no evidence of any loan or contribution. Pursuing this lawsuit would be a mistake. By the end of the 3-hour meeting, a new understanding had emerged. My grandfather, whose opinion carried significant weight in the family, stated clearly that while families should support each other in times of need, my parents' demands and methods were unreasonable. Amanda needs to rebuild her life through hard work, just as Braxton built his, he concluded. And Robert and Diana, you need to withdraw this lawsuit threat immediately and apologize for the false statements you have made to the family. As I drove home that evening, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, sadness, and relief. The family meeting had cleared my name and exposed the truth, but the relationships I had valued all my life were fundamentally altered. I knew things would never be quite the same again. Part 8. Resolution and Life Lessons. The aftermath of the family meeting unfolded gradually over the following weeks. 3 days after our confrontation at my grandfather's house, I received a formal letter from my parents' attorney, withdrawing all claims regarding my apartment, and acknowledging there had been no financial contribution from my parents toward its purchase. 2 weeks later, the case was officially dismissed in court. The judge, after reviewing the documentation I had provided, issued a stern warning to my parents' attorney about bringing frivolous claims and potentially sanctionable conduct. I was awarded recovery of my legal fees, though collecting them from my parents would be another matter entirely. The public record now contained a legal vindication of my position, which brought a sense of relief after months of stress and uncertainty. Rachel called to congratulate me on the outcome. This is the best possible result, she said. A complete withdrawal of their claims and judicial recognition that they were baseless. How are you feeling about everything? Relieved, I admitted, but also sad. Winning a legal battle against your own parents is not something to celebrate. The extended family dynamics shifted noticeably following our confrontation. Several relatives who had initially believed my parents' version of events reached out to apologize for their assumptions. My Aunt Patricia invited me to dinner and expressed regret for not questioning my mother's claims sooner. Your mother has always had a blind spot when it comes to Amanda, she confided. I should have known there was more to the story. My parents themselves maintained a chilly distance for several weeks before my mother eventually called. Her voice was subdued, lacking the emotional manipulation that had characterized our recent interactions. Your grandfather and several others have made it clear they think we were wrong, she said, without preamble. While we still believe families should support each other, We acknowledge we should not have claimed we contributed to your apartment purchase. We apologize for that specific misrepresentation. It was a limited apology that sidestepped their numerous other actions, but it was something. I accepted it as a starting point, knowing that rebuilding trust would be a long process if it happened at all. Amanda took longer to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Her Instagram remained filled with vague posts about toxic family members and standing your ground when others try to bring you down for several months. Eventually prompted by pressure from our grandfather and other relatives, she sent me a text message. I was desperate and scared about my future, she wrote. I still think you could have done more to help, but I should not have supported the false claim about your apartment funding. I apologize for that part. Like my parents' apology, it was limited and qualified, but it represented a small step toward honesty. I responded by reiterating my original offer of temporary housing and job connections, minus the cash loan I had initially proposed. She declined, but thanked me for the offer. Some family members maintained their distance from me either out of embarrassment about taking sides or lingering doubt about the situation. Holiday gatherings became more complicated with careful seating arrangements to minimize awkward interactions. The easy familiarity of our previous family dynamic was gone, replaced by a more cautious, formalized relationship. Throughout this challenging period, my therapy sessions with Dr. Russell provided essential support for processing my feelings and establishing healthier boundaries. Family relationships are particularly difficult to navigate because they come with deeply ingrained patterns and expectations, she explained during one session. You have disrupted a long-standing dynamic in which you were expected to be the self-sufficient one, while Amanda received unlimited support. That disruption was necessary and healthy, but it will take time for everyone to adjust to the new reality. I also found tremendous value in the friendships that had sustained me during the crisis. Tyler and several other friends had provided unwavering support, offering places to stay if needed, helping me organize my documentation, and simply listening when I needed to vent my frustration and hurt. Blood makes you related, Tyler reminded me over beers one evening. Loyalty, respect, and genuine care make you family. Sometimes those overlap, and sometimes they do not. His words resonated deeply. Throughout this ordeal, I had discovered that my chosen family of friends offered more authentic support than many of my blood relatives had. This realization, while initially painful, ultimately felt liberating. Professionally, the experience strengthened my resolve to maintain my financial independence. I redoubled my efforts at work, earning an excellent performance review and subsequent promotion 6 months after the lawsuit was dismissed. My emergency fund, partially depleted by legal fees, became a top priority to rebuild. My apartment, which had been the center of the conflict, took on new significance. I had always appreciated it as an achievement and investment, but now it represented something more: my successful defense of boundaries and self-respect. I completed several long-postponed improvement projects, making the space even more distinctly mine. 3 months after the legal proceedings concluded, my grandfather invited me to lunch. At 84, he remained the family's moral center, and his support throughout the conflict had meant more than I could express. I am proud of you, Braxton, he said, as we sat in his favorite diner. Not just for standing your ground, but for how you did it. You were firm, but not vengeful. You defended yourself without trying to destroy your parents or sister. That shows character. His words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I never wanted to hurt them. I just could not let them take everything I had worked for. Your parents lost sight of an important truth, he said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. Our children are not extensions of ourselves or repositories for our unfulfilled dreams. They are independent beings who deserve to create their own lives. Your sister needs to learn that her choices have consequences, and your parents need to learn that enabling her is not true support. Do you think our family will ever be the same? I asked. He smiled sadly. Number. But different does not have to mean worse. Healthier boundaries might eventually create more authentic relationships. Truth is painful sometimes, but necessary for genuine connection. As we approach the 1-year anniversary of that initial shocking demand from my parents, I can look back with greater clarity and perspective. The experience taught me several profound lessons that have reshaped my understanding of family boundaries and self-worth. I learned that entitlement grows in the soil of enablement. My sister's expectation that others should solve her problems stemmed directly from a lifetime of bailouts and special treatment. By contrast, my self-reliance was born from the knowledge that I needed to create my own security. I discovered the crucial difference between documentation and assumption. My meticulous financial records protected me from false claims that might otherwise have been impossible to disprove. In family matters, as in business, clarity and documentation prevent misunderstandings and manipulation. Perhaps most importantly, I came to understand that true family relationships must be built on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. Support freely given strengthens bonds. Support extracted through manipulation and threats destroys them. Today, my relationship with my parents and sister continues to evolve. We communicate more formally than before with clearer boundaries and expectations. Some family gatherings still feel strained, but others have moments of genuine warmth and connection. I remain open to rebuilding trust while maintaining the boundaries that protect my well-being. As for Amanda, she eventually found employment at a public relations firm and rents a modest apartment in Philadelphia. The lifestyle adjustment has been difficult for her but necessary. Our relationship remains distant but civil, and I see small signs of growth in her increasing self-sufficiency. Standing your ground against family pressure is perhaps one of the most difficult challenges many of us will face. The people who have known us longest often believe they have the right to make demands in the name of family loyalty. Learning to distinguish between reasonable support and unreasonable sacrifice is a crucial life skill I never expected to develop through such a painful experience. Have you ever had to stand your ground against unreasonable family demands? How did you balance family loyalty with self-protection? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries with family is not just acceptable, but sometimes necessary for everyone's well-being. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that true family supports your growth, not your sacrifice.